Welcome to the Twisted Libra Cemetery, where there is always life after death. Welcome to the cemetery, my lovelies. I am your delightfully wicked host, the Twisted Libra, and this is Craving the Darkness, the official podcast of the Twisted Libra Cemetery. Do you enjoy dark things? Are you drawn to the macabre? Then you, my friend, have come to the right place. Grab a seat on a tombstone and join me now as we take a look at today's topic, werewolves. Many a frightful tale exists in which a gentle human transforms into a vicious werewolf by the light of the full moon. Is there any truth to stories like this? Where did they originate? The earliest known depictions of lycanthropy, that's a fancy term for being a werewolf, date back to Greek and Mesopotamian mythology. The well-known Epic of Gilgamesh contains an instance of a shepherd being turned into a wolf in an act of revenge. The Greeks told the story of King Lycaon, whom Zeus turned into a wolf as punishment. This particular story is the source for the previously mentioned term lycanthropy. Another word for werewolf is a lycanthrope. Norse mythology gave us the saga of the Volsungs, which told of a father and son who wore wolf pelts that could temporarily turn them into wolves. In fact, Icelandic warriors called Ulfhethan were clothed in wolf skins and fought in a trance-like fury. These fierce soldiers could very well have been the early incarnation of the werewolf. In his work titled City of God, St. Augustine wrote, "It is generally believed that by certain witches' spells, men may be turned into wolves." The folklore surrounding werewolves had permeated the Catholic Church. Throughout the centuries, it was believed that lycanthropy was real and could be spread through curses, spells, or a bite from one of the afflicted. The full moon has always been viewed as a powerful symbol in many cultures. Folklore dictates that the light, or mana, from a full moon can draw out the wolf inside a person. It is the most commonly known trigger for lycanthropy. Some believe, however, that a werewolf can transform at any time if they're able to learn how to change at will. Otherwise, they are slaves to the lunar cycle. The first Hollywood version of the werewolf came about in 1913 in a silent film titled simply The Werewolf. Now, sadly, this film is considered lost, as all copies were destroyed in a storage fire in 1924. We weren't graced with another silver screen depiction until 1935 in Werewolf of London. In 1941, Universal threw its hat in the ring with The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. Fun fact, after his rise to fame in Dracula, Bela Lugosi was offered the lead role in the Universal Studios version of Frankenstein. Now, he turned it down due to the lack of dialogue for the character, as well as a fear that all the makeup would hide his face and thus detract from his performance. Unfortunately, this had a rather negative impact on his career. Perhaps in some form of regret, he accepted a small role in The Wolfman as Bela the Gypsy. He eventually did take on the role of Frankenstein in a later and less successful Universal film. Now, throughout the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the werewolf genre was actually considered low-end. It wasn't until the 1980s that we saw a resurgence in profitable werewolf films. Hollywood gave us The Howling in 1981, as well as An American Werewolf in London. 1985 brought out hits like Silver Bullet and Teen Wolf, the latter being one of the early forays into the comedic side of lycanthropy. Now, I feel I would be remiss if I failed to mention one of my favorites, the 1987 comedy horror treasure known as The Monster Squad. This film included high-quality depictions of all our favorite monsters, Wolfman included. It was this story that taught many of us that werewolves do, in fact, have nards. Since the 80s, there have been many depictions of the werewolf on film, television, and in books. As with most other monster genres, the werewolf canon is not without some shortcomings. Now, my main peeve with werewolves is when they are depicted as still wearing their clothes when they turn. A lot of werewolves are shown with pants ripped off just below the thigh and sometimes a shredded shirt still fitting around their shoulders. So we're supposed to believe that their human bodies morph into huge, beastly creatures, yet their waist and hips remain the same size. And even if they rip out of all their clothes and are found later in naked human form, I'm still not satisfied because, my God, how much do they have to spend on clothing each year? Now, I'm not one for giving kudos to Twilight very often, but at least the werewolves were written in a more sensible manner. They almost always removed their clothing when they sensed a change coming on, and they kept spare outfits hidden in multiple locations, lest they found themselves the victims of public nudity. No werewolf walk of shame in good old Forks, Washington. So, does your beloved Twisted Libra have a favorite werewolf? Well, sort of. It's actually a bit of a cheat. Niklaus Michelson, better known as simply Klaus, from The Vampire Diaries and the spin-off The Originals, was a werewolf-vampire hybrid. He was the only one of his kind for centuries until he figured out how to create others. Now, true, he is not a pure werewolf. However, he is a handsome, charming badass who got the best of both worlds. As far as lichens go, he definitely hung the moon that makes him change. Well, I think we've all been transformed from that discussion. For now, anyways. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. If you did, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also rate this show on Spotify and Apple, and share the link with your friends. Feel free to come play with me in the cemetery at twistedlibracemetery.com. All my wicked creations are buried there, beneath the light of a full moon. I have a little something for every dark, howling soul. Thank you so much for joining me today, my lovelies. Until next time.